What's up, everyone? Welcome. It's the Tuesday night Anna Alexis Podcast featured by me, Anna Alexis. We are so excited to have you tonight and just get a chance to share this space with you while we are going through our lives. You know, as we talked about last week, we have the end of the year coming up. Last week, we were at 84 days. So as you can see now, we're definitely in the 70s in terms of what we are waiting for that countdown of the end of the year. And for those of you that are joining, I just want to welcome you. If this is your first time to the Anna Alexis Podcast, I want to be the one to personally welcome you. This is something that I started the middle of June 2024. I had just had a baby a few weeks prior and had really just had something wrestling on my heart, because what I feel like so many times is that we as women, also we as people, we can just get stuck, and we can get stuck kind of living the same week on repeat over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden we blink and we're like, how is it the middle of October? How is it 2024? Where were those last 5 years? Where were those last 10 years? How am I already 45? Oh my God, I'm 60. I didn't do anything. I wanted to make something of myself. And I just want to use this time where we're together on Tuesday night, to take a breath and just say, I'm right on time. I'm right on time with who I'm supposed to be. Even if I'm lacking a little bit of that clarity, even if I'm lacking a little bit of that direction, I'm still right on time with who I want to be and who I'm meant to be. So even if there's parts of me that I'm not really loving, I'm still right on time with where I should be going. And just us spending a few minutes every Tuesday night at 6:30 to just kind of unpack that, but also just give you that space to take a deep breath and refocus on where you want to go. Because I know better than anyone where you want to go, and you're going to make a change, whether that's in your health, in your relationships, in your career, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden you just get into the groove of things, then you find yourself in a rut, and then you blink and you're like, dang, that was another week. That was another month. That was another year. Dang, that went by so fast. And really just taking this time to ask yourself, is my week over week taking me to where I want to go? Or is it leaving me in the same spot? Because what's challenging to think is if you think, oh, I'm just in the same spot, there isn't a lot changing. It is changing, but it's going like this, very, very, very slowly. And then you don't notice it. And then all of a sudden, bam, that year, that 5 years, that time goes by, and you wake up and you go, holy cow, I didn't think I was going to end up here. And how many people do we know, or even us personally, where we've watched them kind of sit with that regret of like, man, I never thought I'd find myself here. Well, that's because failure doesn't happen in one cataclysmic boom event. It's all of these small things that add up day over day, week over week, month over month, year over year, and giving yourself a chance to say and be on your team to say, hey, I need to take inventory. I need to figure out where I'm going amiss so that I can redirect myself. And so tonight I'm going to be doing our podcast episode over what we had just done in our masterclass last Wednesday through Her Dream Collective. I'm super excited about it, but it was some content that I feel like it's something that needs to be available to everyone, because in this day and age that we're in, I feel like we're so connected, but we're also more isolated than ever. We can have access to anything. You don't even need to leave your house to get everything that you need. And so we've got that connectedness, but how many of us are sitting at home just sad or empty or lost and wondering like, where is my next move? What are we doing? And when we're not in that fellowship with each other, that makes it a lot easier to find that isolation. You know, one of my favorite quotes from Jim Carrey, it talks about depression, but it says, that's just your avatar letting you know it doesn't want to play this part anymore. And kind of seeing that as an outward sense, because so many times we can look at ourselves, especially if we're feeling not that great, and be like, what the hell is wrong with me? Get it together. Come on, get it together. You used to do this. You used to like this. Why can't I make myself move? And we need to take that time to just, again, on these Tuesday nights, taking a breath and just saying, am I going the way I want to be going? Do I like this trajectory that I'm on? Do I like the end goal of how I'm showing up? Because it's our days that make our weeks, that make our months, that make our years. And whether or not we have a good year or a bad year in terms of our growth and where we're going has a lot to do with what we're doing every single day. One of the things that I had heard over the weekend that really just stuck with me that I'll probably do an episode on soon is it said, your goals don't make you special. Because it's not about the outcome, it's about the activity. What are you doing? I want to get in better health. Well, doesn't everybody? What did you do today to make that happen? I want to gain financial freedom for my family. Cool. What did you do today to make that happen? And making it about actions as opposed to what that outcome is. And so over the next few minutes, I just want to highlight what we were going over on Wednesday, because again, I just find that there's so much value in that. For everyone. And so if you're finding yourself, especially now that we're getting into the holidays, and the holidays have so many emotions around them. There's like those happy memories. Sometimes there's regret. Sometimes there's shame. Sometimes there's just sadness because there are going to be people missing. And it can be really easy to just blink and say, I'm going to start fresh in January. And if you want to start fresh in January, I get it. Everybody is going through something. And one of the things I talked about a lot on Wednesday was every single one of us has a chapter that no one reads aloud. Even your best friend, your spouse, there's parts of you that not everybody's going to know, or not a single person knows, because that lives within you. And so just knowing, honor yourself with where you are, but also honor yourself with where you are. Because if you're used to just clicking on autopilot in October, I'd examine that. Because so many times we'll get those feelings up. What we talked about in even episode 1 of the podcast is you get that whisper inside of you that is like, I want to do this. And some of us just don't believe, or we feel shame or regret, or that we feel like it's too late, and we just push that shit down. If you know that maybe you've been doing that last year, last month, last week, or even today, I just want to meet you where you are to say part of honoring yourself is sometimes doing hard things. And it's doing things that you don't know if they matter. Will it ever matter? Will it pan out? Because it's not about this outcome of where you want to go. It's about honoring what that voice is right now to get you to the next step. Because the next step leads you to the next step, which leads you to the next step. But we don't see it until we look backwards. That's why when they'll say hindsight is 20/20. And that's so true, because we want to think that this next move is going to somehow unfold and it's going to be everything, but it isn't. It's just going to be a little part of it. We've been watching This Is Us. I love that show. I cry every time we watch it. And in one of the episodes they're talking about, well, I just want to be able to find out who I am. And one of the characters says, I don't think you get to find out who you are all at once. You get little pieces of yourself along the way that give you back who you are. And so as we jump into this, it's all about rediscovering who that's going to be, and rediscovering those pieces that even maybe are missing. If you have passions or dreams that you're like, man, I always thought I was going to be doing that. I really loved doing that. And you kind of feel that there's kind of like when you, like, if you were to lose a little gem or a diamond, you would lose it. You're like, hey, there was something that was supposed to go there. Rediscovering what that is, and taking that time to really take inventory on yourself to say, what are those things? What are the things that I want to be a part of? But also, what are the things that I can improve on? Because again, if we are addicted and we're looking for this outcome and we only are going after the end result, well, when you get there, you're not going to get to keep it, because you were there for the outcome, not the activity that got you there. And it's so easy to cross the finish line and think, I have arrived. But Tony Robbins talks about this a lot. He talks about it more in relationships, but it is true literally everywhere. If you do what you did in the beginning, it will never end. Whatever that activity is. So whether that's keeping the love or keeping the motivation, showing up for yourself, doing that day in and day out, it will never end. But maybe you're listening to this and you're like, man, I stopped doing that. I just learned how to do that recently because of the baby. I've never been able to, so hooray for me. But when you're feeling that, you want to find yourself that time to be able to go and do that, to be able to show up for yourself. And the best way that you can do that is rediscovering what it is you felt like you left behind and being honest with yourself on where that is and what that looks like. Because sometimes our biggest obstacles, they're hidden in plain sight. And what can be so challenging is that we think that once we change our mind, it's just going to change. But how I want you to think about change is think about if you had to turn a cruise ship around. You can't just, whoop, whoop. It doesn't work that way. That sucker is huge. And how do you show up for yourself in those moments? And so what I want you to remember tonight as we go through it is this rule called 1 in 60. And what that means is for every degree of difference in the boating world, after every 60 miles, you will be 1 mile off course or back on course. So if you have a really long journey ahead of you, which hopefully all of our lives, very long journey, is that if you're making these small changes, when it makes that small degree change for a while, it looks like nothing has really changed. But if a boat were to leave England and go to the coast of America, every 60 miles is a miles different. So if they're aiming for New York, they're not going to make it. They're going to be someplace completely different. And what's exciting about that is you're the captain. You get to choose, but also know that it's like you can't change exactly where you're going overnight immediately, but you can change the direction and start moving that way. And what does that look like for you? Because once we rediscover where it is we are, we have to realign with the truth of who we are. And a lot of times in that realignment, this is where it gets uncomfortable because you want to realign with who you are, but maybe you're holding shame, fear, regret, whatever it is, to where you're like, I don't really probably deserve that. That maybe isn't for me. And I want to remind you to listen to your gut, to be in that intuitive space, but also to know that those places where you're holding that regret or that shame, really asking yourself, was I doing the best I could with what I knew in that moment? Not what you know now, because it's so easy for me to look at 22-year-old Anna and be like, oh my God, but she didn't know. If she would have known, she'd have made some different choices, but she didn't, because again, everything is leading you to where you're meant to be. And a lot of that on where you're meant to be is finding that forgiveness to meet yourself where you are and say, hey, I've not been doing so great the past day, week, month, year. I need to get back on that. But the best way you're going to do that is to forgive yourself for where you have taken yourself and say, I'm ready for my next right move. What is my next right move? And checking in with those decisions that you feel, again, that fear, that shame, that guilt, whatever it is, and really asking yourself, how was I feeling in that moment? Because for me, when I find those times where I want to not be my friend, I forget that I was probably overwhelmed. I was probably feeling anxious. I might have been feeling less than. I might have been feeling not very worthy of it. And so I was making choices based on those lesser feelings. And now that you know better, you can do better. And again, giving yourself that chance to be able to go and do better. And even if you're sitting there going, I know there's something more for me, I don't know what that is. Giving yourself that time to listen to what it is. And when you hear it, which again, it comes as a whisper. Changing your life or realigning with who you're meant to be doesn't come on a billboard with a giant megaphone telling you to turn directions. It comes as this really quiet thing that almost just stops you where you are and you're like, oh, and it's probably incredibly uncomfortable. And when I see probably, I mean literally. It is incredibly uncomfortable. It's giving yourself that chance where you're like, oh man, I don't know. And giving yourself that grace to be able to go and do that and realigning with where you're meant to be so that you can get back on track with your future instead of just being in that reruns of the past. Because it's fun to sit and reminisce there, but you know how it ends. And giving yourself that chance to create something different for yourself. And one of the things that can really get us is you're like, you don't understand. I've got these things and they're weighing me down, whether it is addiction, depression, anxiety, other things that you just can't find your way out of. And you're just kind of thrashing and showing, I can't make a change. And finding within yourself to, again, take a breath, look down, that blame, that regret, that shame, everything that is holding you down, it's not chained to you. You're holding it. And you might not want to hear that right now, because especially when it's heavy and it's all consuming, we want it to be attached to us, and it is. But by your pause. It's not on you like a jail sentence where you're stuck there. But sometimes we want to hold on to the story that we know because it's the easiest. We want to hold on to the story that we know because it's the safest. And how do we go about there and make those decisions to be able to say, I'm going to make a different move. I deserve to make a different move. And reminding yourself, I deserve to make a different move. I can make a different move. I'm not a goldfish. I'm not a houseplant. I can make a move. And understanding that you need to bet on you instead of against you, because how many of us have that little whisper and then we're like, no, you never can do that. There's all this stuff. No, you need to be on your team. If you're waiting for somebody to come and give you this inspiring speech so that you'll change your life, you better go look in the mirror, because that's the only person that you're really going to listen to. It's when you make that decision within yourself. There's people that can inspire you and you'll get that little kick and maybe you'll change, but that long lasting change that's going to get you to where you want to be, that's you versus you. It's you every day, and everyone can love you or support you, or you can have the haters lined up so that you'll make that move. But if you don't believe in you, it's just not going to happen. And figuring out what you need to do that. And that takes us to our next thing, is to that revision, being able to say, that is not serving me anymore. You know, one of the things that I love so much, and again, about that intuitiveness and that revision that needs to take place, is that women are incredibly intuitive. The amount of women I know that was just like, oh yeah, I had a feeling, and being able to honor that feeling and act on it. I cannot tell you the gift you have in doing that. But I want to tell you these two quick things. Not going to be preachy. I hate when people are preachy with me. I could just fall over and smack myself in the face. So I'm not going to do that too, but I'm going to tell you two things about it. In Egyptian culture, if you look at statues of men and women, you will see that the woman's hand and arm is around the man. And it's not because she wasn't the only female pharaoh there is Cleopatra, and these statues are not of her. But what is so interesting is that it is a symbol for that women are the intuitiveness. They are the spiritual guards. They are the ones where we just know, where we can kind of feel that next right move. And we know what that is, but we have to honor that within ourselves, and being able to listen to that, not just for ourselves, but for our families. The other thing I'm going to tell you, and I've always loved this, despite your faith, this is not, it's just that one of the things that I love, and I didn't love it as much until I became a mom, and a mom to like a baby, you know, because that was so different, is it said God meets women where they are. Men have to climb mountains. They have to travel to distant lands. Sometimes they have to climb a mountain and then sacrifice their child. We don't have to do that. As women, God comes to us. We just, again, need to be open and to be listening for what that next right move is, and giving that as a gift to yourself, and being able to say, I deserve this. And when you hear it, stop back talking. When you hear that whisper or that gift or that knowing, so many of us are like, I don't know how that's going to work out. I don't know how we're going to do that. I can't find a way, so it's probably not going to be doing it. Girl, you are just a pawn in the game. You got to be there. One of the analogies I love so much is when you think of like, if you've got like a little like toddler and you get them this little steering wheel car so they can pretend like they're driving, but you're the one driving. That's kind of like how it works. But even though we grown, we the one in the little seat with our little car going, blinker. But the universe, God, whatever your belief system is, that is driving us forward, and being able to recognize that and lining up with that gift, and finding, as we go back to that intuitiveness of finding the win-wins within your family, because this is not the time to say, I'm ready to change my life. You guys better sit down and adjust. No, women, we're ugly like that. But you know, we're also ugly when we feel unsupported. We can become so vicious. And so in that time, as you're trying to allow for your space, understand that every one of us is carrying a weight. And we see those things on Facebook of, everyone has a battle, nobody knows. And we so rarely remember that the people in our house are also fighting a battle that we may know nothing about, that we may only be getting part of the story instead of the whole iceberg of what it is, and finding those win-wins within your house to be able to do that, to be able to show up as your best self and in feminine energy, because that's where creation is. Think of ways to be proactive and to be on your team. And then the last thing we're going to talk about tonight is just giving yourself that grace to rewrite it. There might have been some unideal shit be going on that is not aligned with who you want to be as of this point. Well, just like you're the captain of your boat, you don't get to choose the storms, okay? And I get that. I get that you don't get to choose the things that sometimes happen to you, but you are the captain and you get to choose how your boat's going to be going or if you're just going to give up. You're also the author, which means you have the pen. And sometimes the pen that you've been always using, like the things you've always been doing, if that shit hasn't run out of ink, you should probably give it away. If you're not going the way you want to go, give yourself the opportunity to start over, giving yourself a fresh blank slate to say, what is it that I want to work on? Who is it I want to be? How is it that I want to show up? And again, just recircling back to what we talked about earlier, every single one of us has a chapter that we don't read aloud. So if you're sitting there saying, I want to rewrite my story, but I don't think I deserve it. Welcome to every single person on the history of the whole planet that has ever lived. Congratulations, you've made it into the club. Every single one of us is carrying a chain or a setback or a feeling that is holding us captive at times. And it's really just deciding, are you going to let it? What is your community like? What are you listening to? What are your routines? How are you showing up for you? Because I know even for myself, a lot of my routines can be very in the groove, which is a rut where I'm like, oh, I really like doing it this way. And I'm like, is that building who you want to be? And I'm like, no, I'm tired. And I get it. I'm the most tired I've ever been in my whole ever loving life. And you might be sitting there too going, I don't know how I'm going to make this work, and finding ways to be on your team. And I can't tell you how to make it work, but here's what I do know. When your mind is set, it's game over. When your mind is set, it's game over. And so many times we can turn it on for our friends or our family or our loved ones, but not ourselves. I'm tired right now, but so help me if one of my friends called me and they said, hey, I have a really big problem. I want to change the course of my life to make it different. I don't like how I'm showing up right now, but I don't know what to do. If I would not find the whole energy in all of the world to go and help them. And what I want to ask you is, if you're sitting there listening going, man, that's me too. Me too. Why aren't we doing that for ourselves? Why can't we love ourselves the way we love our loved ones? Why can't we protect ourselves the way we protect our loved ones? Because so many times as you start saying, hey, I'm going to show up, I'm ready to do something different, there's a couple things we need to look out for. Is your subconscious is going to go, it's going to pretend to be your best friend, and it's going to go, oh, yeah, that dream is so beautiful. Have you thought about these 97,001 things that could go absolutely wrong? Is that safe? Is that something you should really be doing? And it is going to just smother you and push you right back down into fitting in this little box like everybody else. Because at the end of the day, that little subconscious is just like this little kid, and it wants us to be liked and loved and safe. Our brain literally is a mechanism that is built to keep us alive. And so it wants to keep us safe. So understanding what you need to do, but also understanding that you just wanting it to be different and not being a part of any sort of community or listening to audios or taking the first step or any accountability, it's just not going to work. One of the things that when I heard it almost a year ago, it means more to me now than when I did. And I swear I've heard it every month, but it says willpower will never outdo a community. So who are you surrounding yourself with? The other thing, and one of the last things I'm going to leave you with, is sometimes the longer you stand there saying you want something to be different, the harder it is. When I was a kid, we would go to Glendo. It's a lake in Wyoming, and people would jump off this ledge. And it wasn't very high, but when you're up there, it's high. And the longer I stood there, the longer it took me to be able to go. But had I just gone and did it, I can adjust. Remember, every decision you make, this isn't concrete. You're not turning it into a statue where this is who you're always going to be and you're stuck like this. No, this is fluid. If you make a move and you're like, that was too soon. That was not correct. I need it to be over here. No, you can change it. Again, you're the author. You're the captain. You need to remember that. Life isn't happening to you. It's happening for you. And so again, we can't change our destination overnight. We can't just blink and then just be there. But what we can do is change the direction. And if you're committed to changing the direction, you will knock your socks off. You will show up in a way a month from now where you can't even recognize it. But again, you have to understand where you are, forgive yourself, be ready to make that revision, and then be able to say, hey, I'm ready to rewrite my story. And not as some person in the back that's pretending to be a bush in the play, as a main character. I'm ready to rewrite my life as a main character, not in the audience, not outside, not be in the bush in the back, not as an accessory, as a main character. This is the only life you will ever get, getting to be the person that you are. And if you do not believe that you are an infinite being capable of doing extraordinary, great, and powerful things, then when it's all said and done, you're going to be reliving these reels of who you could have been instead of who you were. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for me. Take that time tonight to say, this is how I want to show up. This is who I want to be, and be on your team. You deserve this. I love you. Good night. And we will see you next Tuesday at 6:30. Bye.